It all started 6 years ago, though it feels like a lifetime. Emily, my daughter, had the kind of joy you see in romantic comedies, glowing with excitement, every sentence punctuated by mentions of Michael, her fiancé. They'd been together since college, a perfect match by everyone's standards. She was deep into wedding planning when the world, as she knew it, came crashing down. That night, Emily came home visibly shaken. Her eyes were red and swollen, her movements jerky, as if she couldn't decide what to do next. She didn't say a word, just shoved her phone into my hands. On the screen was a series of text messages from Michael, confessing to an affair. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach lurch, was the name attached. Charlotte, my other daughter, Emily's stepsister. Mom, she's been sleeping with Michael, Emily choked out, her voice raw and trembling. How could she do this to me? She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing so hard I thought she'd stop breathing. I sat beside her, frozen, unsure what to say or do. My mind raced. Charlotte and Emily had never been close, but I never thought Charlotte was capable of something like this. The next morning, I tried to process what had happened. Charlotte, oblivious to the storm brewing, came into the kitchen. When I confronted her, she had the audacity to shrug. "It just happened, Mom," she said nonchalantly. I didn't mean to hurt her. Her words ignited a fury I rarely felt. I yelled, asked her how she could betray her own sister, but Charlotte simply said, "We weren't that close anyway." Michael said things were rocky between them. When I relayed this to Emily, her face crumpled. "She's trying to justify it," she asked, her voice hollow. "She's not even sorry, Mom." "Not really." In those first few days, I tried my best to support Emily, but the rift between us started to show almost immediately. My instinct was to fix things. I kept saying that, despite what happened, Charlotte was still family and somehow, we needed to find a way forward. "What's done is done," I told Emily, hoping to steer her toward acceptance. "You can't change it. The best thing you can do is move on." But instead of comforting her, my words seemed to push her further away. "Move on," she spat, eyes blazing with disbelief. "How do you expect me to move on when my own sister slept with my fiancé? What kind of person forgives that?" "I just don't want this to tear the family apart," I argued, frustrated by her refusal to see my perspective. "I know it's awful, but you're stronger than this, Emily. Hate will only poison you." She stared at me, unblinking, for what felt like an eternity. "Poison me? Mom, this isn't about me being bitter or angry. This is about betrayal. You're telling me to just get over it so you can play happy family." The conversation spiraled from there. No matter how much I tried to explain my intentions, Emily couldn't see anything but betrayal, mine as well as Charlotte's. When Charlotte finally called Emily to apologize, the damage was already done. Emily refused to pick up, her resolve hardening with every passing day. "Tell her I don't want to hear from her," Emily told me when I mentioned the call. "Tell her to stay out of my life." The breaking point came a week later. I found Emily in her childhood bedroom, furiously shoving clothes into a suitcase. "What are you doing?" I asked, alarmed. "I'm leaving," she said, not looking up. "I can't be here anymore. Not with her. Not with you pretending like this can be fixed." I begged her to stay, told her we'd work through it as a family. But she was already too far gone. "There is no family, Mom," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not anymore. You don't get it. You never took my side. You never made me feel like I mattered." Her words hit me like a freight train. "That's not true, Emily. I love you. I'm just trying to keep everyone together." She shook her head, zipping up her suitcase with finality. "That's the problem. You're so worried about everyone else, you don't see what I need. I need space. I need to be away from this house, from Charlotte, from you." She hugged me briefly before leaving, but it felt more like goodbye than see you later. Watching her drive away, I felt an ache in my chest I couldn't name. Part of me believed she'd come back once she cooled off. But the days turned into weeks, and then months, with barely a word from her. By the time I realized how wrong I'd been, she was already gone. The first few weeks after Emily left were suffocating. I'd wake up each morning hoping to find a text or missed call from her, anything to signal she was ready to talk. Instead, there was nothing but silence. The house felt emptier than it ever had, even though Charlotte was still there. The weight of Emily's absence hung over everything, her untouched bedroom, the faint scent of her favorite vanilla lotion lingering in the air, and the quiet at the dinner table that no amount of conversation could fill. Charlotte, however, didn't seem fazed. In fact, she carried on as if nothing had happened. A few days after Emily left, she asked if I'd mind if her new boyfriend came over for dinner. Her new boyfriend. The casualness of her request made me want to scream. "Charlotte," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily just left. I don't think it's the right time." She rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter. "She'll get over it," she said, brushing off the tension like it was a bad storm that would eventually pass. Emily's always been dramatic. She just needs time to cool down. I stared at her, speechless. Dramatic? That was her take on this? My heart ached for Emily, who'd been blindsided by betrayal, while Charlotte acted like her sister's pain was a minor inconvenience. "Charlotte," I said, choosing my words carefully, "what you did, it wasn't just a mistake. It broke her." Charlotte scoffed. "Michael was unhappy. It's not like I planned this. Besides, it's not my fault she's holding a grudge." Over the following months, I tried to reach out to Emily. I sent her long, heartfelt texts apologizing, promising we'd find a way to move forward. Her replies, if they came at all, were curt and distant. "Thanks for the message. I need space right now." Or, "I'm not ready to talk about this." Each response felt like a door being slammed in my face. At first, I convinced myself she just needed time. But as weeks turned into months, her distance felt more permanent. She blocked Charlotte on every platform, which wasn't surprising, but what stung was how she seemed to keep me at arm's length too. Every call I made went straight to voicemail. I left messages, pleading for her to talk to me. I even tried sending letters, pouring out my regret and love, but they went unanswered. In the rare moments she did reply, it was like she was speaking to a stranger. There was no warmth, no trace of the girl who used to call me just to tell me about her day. I knew I'd made mistakes, pushing her to forgive Charlotte, minimizing her pain, but I thought a mother's love would be enough to overcome that. It wasn't. Charlotte, meanwhile, seemed to thrive in the silence. She rarely brought up Emily and seemed to view her absence as a clean slate. She started dating a man named Ryan, who came over often. He was kind enough, but his presence only highlighted the growing gap between my daughters. I tiptoed around the elephant in the room, avoiding conversations about Emily, because I didn't want to alienate Charlotte too. One evening, after dinner, I brought up Emily. "Have you thought about reaching out to her?" I asked Charlotte hesitantly. Charlotte looked up from her phone and shrugged. "Why?" "She clearly doesn't want to talk to me." "Because she's your sister," I said, my voice trembling with frustration. "Because what you did hurt her, and you owe it to her to at least try." Charlotte sighed dramatically, setting her phone down. "I already apologized, Mom." She didn't want to hear it. What am I supposed to do, grovel? I'm not going to spend my life begging for forgiveness over one mistake. Her words felt like a slap. It was as if she decided that Emily's pain had an expiration date, and now that time was up. I wanted to yell, to tell her how selfish she sounded, but I was too exhausted. Instead, I just nodded and let the conversation drop. By the time Emily's next birthday rolled around, I was clinging to the hope that she'd respond to my card. I'd written her a heartfelt message, telling her how much I missed her and how proud I was of the woman she'd become. I even tucked in a photo of the two of us from her high school graduation, hoping it would spark some kind of connection. But when the day came, there was no response. Not even a quick thanks text. It was then that I realized how much I'd underestimated her pain. Emily wasn't just hurt. She was done. And as much as it broke my heart to admit it, I couldn't blame her. I'd failed her when she needed me most. I chose to protect the fragile illusion of family unity over her well-being, and now I was paying the price. For 3 years, I didn't know where she lived or what she was doing. The only glimpses I got of her life were through occasional updates from mutual friends or family members. "Emily's doing well," they'd say vaguely, but they never offered details, and I didn't press. I told myself she needed space, but deep down I knew the truth. I had made her feel like she didn't matter. And now, I was living with the silence I'd earned. 2 years ago, I learned the news in the most casual way, like a passing comment that someone didn't realize would shatter me. A mutual friend called to catch up and mentioned, almost offhandedly, "Did you know Emily got married last weekend?" She looked so beautiful. The world seemed to tilt under my feet. My daughter, my only child, had gotten married, and I hadn't even known. I felt an ache so deep it left me breathless. I asked a few questions, my voice trembling. Who was the groom? Where did the wedding take place? The answers didn't matter. What mattered was the glaring absence of one detail: me. I wasn't there. I spent hours combing through social media, hoping to find a picture, a clue, anything. When I finally came across a tagged photo, my heart cracked open. Emily was radiant in a simple white dress, her hair swept up in loose curls, and her smile was wide and unrestrained. She was arm in arm with her new husband, a man I didn't recognize, and surrounded by friends and family. Except I wasn't among them. I waited a day before calling her. I knew I needed to calm down, but the hurt was bubbling over. When she finally picked up, her tone was neutral, almost wary.
Hi, Mom.
What's up? What's up? I repeated, struggling to keep my voice steady. Emily, I just found out you got married.
Why didn't you tell me?
Why wasn't I there? There was a long pause, and then she sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. Because I didn't want you there, Mom. Her words were a slap. Emily, I'm your mother, I said, my voice cracking. You don't think I deserve to be there for your wedding? No, Mom, you didn't, she said bluntly. You didn't deserve to be there, because you weren't there when it really mattered. You didn't take my side when Charlotte slept with Michael. You told me to forgive her and move on, like my feelings didn't even matter. And then you let her stay in your life, like nothing happened. That's not fair, I protested, my voice rising. I wasn't choosing sides. I was trying to hold the family together. What family, Mom? She shot back, her voice sharp and bitter. The one where my stepsister can steal my fiancé and still get a seat at Christmas dinner? The one where you tell me to let it go while I'm falling apart? Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I'd always thought my intentions were good, that I was doing the right thing by urging forgiveness. But hearing Emily's anger so raw and unfiltered made me realize how much I'd failed her. Emily, I didn't mean to hurt you, I said, my voice shaking. I just didn't know what to do. You didn't mean to hurt me, she repeated, her tone cold. But you did. And you never made it right. So no, I didn't want you at my wedding, Mom. I didn't want someone there who made me feel like I didn't matter. The call ended shortly after that, with Emily saying she needed to go. I sat on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, replaying her words over and over. I thought about the years of silence between us, the missed birthdays and holidays, and now this, her wedding. I'd missed one of the biggest milestones of her life, and it wasn't an accident. She'd made a deliberate choice to exclude me, and I couldn't blame her. When I finally mustered the courage to look through more wedding photos, I noticed her stepmother in several of them. She was there, smiling and laughing with Emily, holding her bouquet while she danced with her new husband. It stung in a way I couldn't describe, knowing that someone else had taken my place. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I hadn't been a good mother. Maybe I deserved this.
But the ache didn't go away.
Seeing Emily so happy, so radiant, without me there was a reminder that she'd built a life where I wasn't needed. And worse, maybe she was better off that way. I cried myself to sleep that night, clutching an old photo of the two of us from when she was little. I used to think I'd always be her rock, her safe place. But now, I was just a distant memory, someone she'd left behind along with all the pain I'd caused. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I saw it. I was scrolling through Facebook, half distracted by the mundane updates of acquaintances, when a picture appeared that made my heart stop. There was Emily radiant and cradling a baby bump that hadn't been there the last time I saw her, years ago at this point. Her smile was wide and genuine, the kind that reached her eyes, and she was surrounded by people. But my attention immediately zeroed in on the woman standing closest to her, her stepmother. Emily leaned into her stepmother's embrace, her head tilted affectionately against the woman's shoulder. They looked so at ease with each other, as if this was the relationship Emily had always longed for. I couldn't help but feel a sharp pang of jealousy and grief. That should have been me. I should have been the one at her side, celebrating this incredible milestone. Instead, I was sitting at home, an outsider piecing together her life through social media scraps. I stared at the photo for a long time, memorizing every detail. The baby shower decorations, the glowing smiles of her friends, and the way her stepmother seemed perfectly at home in the center of it all. It wasn't just that she was there, it was that she belonged there in a way I didn't anymore. Later that day, I worked up the courage to reach out. I typed and retyped a message until it felt just right.
Hi, Emily.
I saw the photos. Congratulations on your pregnancy. You look so beautiful and happy. I'd love to catch up sometime if you're open to it. I hit send and waited, my heart pounding. Her reply came hours later, short and to the point. Thanks, we're really excited. Hope you're doing well. That was it. No warmth, no invitation to talk further. I debated whether to push the conversation or let it go, but the thought of staying silent felt unbearable. I sent another message, asking if we could meet up. I'd love to see you, Emily, I wrote. Even just for a quick coffee. I miss you so much. Her response came faster this time, but it wasn't what I'd hoped for. I don't think that's a good idea, she wrote. I can't trust you, Mom. Not after everything. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut.
Trust.
That was the crux of it, wasn't it? She didn't trust me to be there for her, to support her without judgment or betrayal. I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to swallow the lump rising in my throat. I wanted to tell her how sorry I was, to explain again that I'd only ever wanted to keep the family together. But I knew that wouldn't matter to her. I'd made my choices years ago, and those choices had told Emily everything she needed to know about where she stood in my life. What hurt the most was the knowledge that someone else had stepped into the role I'd abandoned. Her stepmother had become the support I wasn't, the person Emily could lean on without fear of being dismissed or ignored. I'd spent so much time trying to fix things with Charlotte and keep the peace that I hadn't seen the damage I was doing to my own relationship with Emily. Now it felt too late to undo it. I couldn't shake the image of that photo. Emily, glowing and happy, her stepmother's arm around her shoulder. They looked like a team, like a mother and daughter should. And I wasn't part of it. After days of debating, I finally mustered the courage to call Emily. I couldn't let her last message sit unanswered. The words, "I can't trust you," echoed in my head, each syllable more painful than the last. I needed to hear her voice, to try to break through the wall she'd built between us. When she picked up, her tone was guarded, but at least she didn't hang up. "Emily," I began softly, "I know you said you don't trust me, but I want to fix that. Please let me try." There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear her breathing, slow and steady. Then, in a voice laced with restrained emotion, she said, "Mom, you can't just fix this. It's not that simple." "I know it's not simple," I replied, desperate to keep her on the line. "But I want to be there for you. For the baby. I miss you so much." Her laugh was short and bitter. "You miss me now? Where was this when I needed you?" When Charlotte, her voice cracked, and she stopped, taking a shaky breath. "You didn't take my side, Mom. You didn't even see my side." "That's not true," I said quickly. "I was trying to keep the family together, to what?" she interrupted, her tone sharp and cutting. "To sweep it under the rug? To make it easier for everyone else while I was falling apart? You sided with Charlotte. You chose her, Mom. And don't pretend you didn't." Her accusation landed like a blow. "That's not fair, Emily," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't choose her. I didn't know how to handle everything. I thought if you forgave her." "Forgave her?" she snapped, the anger in her voice palpable. "She slept with my fiancé, Mom. She destroyed my life, and you expected me to just forgive her? For what? So you wouldn't have to deal with the fallouts?" Her words cut deeper than I could have imagined. I tried to explain myself, to tell her that I only wanted to keep the family intact, but she wasn't having it. "I needed a mom," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Not a mediator. Not someone trying to play peacemaker. I needed someone to stand up for me, to tell Charlotte what she did was unforgivable. But you didn't. You let her stay in your life, like nothing happened. You didn't even show up for my wedding." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I wanted to tell her how much that decision haunted me, how I cried myself to sleep the night of her wedding, clutching the phone and hoping she'd call. But what would that change now? She didn't need to hear about my pain. It wouldn't erase hers. Her husband's voice suddenly broke in, calm but firm. "This isn't about punishment, Mrs. Jacobs," he said, his tone measured and steady. "This is about protecting our family." I felt my stomach drop. "Protecting your families?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "From me?" "Yes," he said plainly. "From the kind of hurt Emily's already been through. She's moved forward, and we need to focus on the future. If you can't understand why she feels the way she does, how can we trust you to be part of our lives?" His words felt like a final nail in the coffin. I wanted to argue, to plead my case, but the truth was I didn't know what to say. How could I deny that my actions, my choices, had pushed Emily away? I thought about the years of silence, the missed milestones, the countless ways I'd let her down. I'd always told myself I was doing the right thing, but now, faced with the reality of Emily's pain, it all felt hollow. "I love you, Emily," I said finally, my voice breaking. "I always have." She sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion and sadness. "I know you do, Mom, but it's not enough. The call ended shortly after that, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of my failure. I spent the days after that conversation in a fog, replaying every word Emily and her husband had said. Each sentence felt like a puzzle piece, forcing me to confront the larger picture I'd been too afraid to see. I questioned every choice I'd made. Had I been wrong to push forgiveness? To tell Emily to let it go? I'd convinced myself at the time that I was doing what was best for the family, but now I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I'd only torn it apart. Late at night, I would sit in the kitchen nursing a cup of tea, staring at the same worn photo of Emily from her high school graduation. She had her arms slung over my shoulders, beaming with pride and excitement for the future. Back then, she trusted me implicitly. I was her safe place, her sounding board, and I'd let her down when she needed me most. Charlotte, of course, seemed completely unaffected by the fallout. When I told her about Emily's pregnancy, hoping to spark some kind of acknowledgement of what she'd done, she barely even reacted. "Good for her," she said with a shrug, barely looking up from her phone. Her indifference sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. "Charlotte," I said, my voice shaking, "do you even realize what you did? Do you have any idea how much you hurt her?" She sighed and finally set her phone down, looking at me like I was overreacting. "Mom, this was years ago. Emily needs to move on. She's happy now, isn't she? She's married. She's having a baby. What more does she want? What more does she want?" I repeated, incredulous. She wanted her family to stand by her. She wanted me to stand by her. And instead, I let you off the hook because I was too scared to pick a side. Charlotte rolled her eyes. "You're acting like I'm some kind of monster. It was a mistake, okay? People make mistakes." I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, to make her understand the depth of the damage she'd caused. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. Charlotte had moved on, compartmentalized the whole thing into a tidy little box labeled the past. She didn't care about the rift she'd created because it didn't affect her life anymore. But for Emily, that betrayal was a wound that never fully healed. It hit me then. Maybe I'd been wrong all along. Maybe there were some things you shouldn't forgive. I'd spent so much time preaching about family unity, about moving forward and letting go, that I'd completely ignored what Emily actually needed, someone to take her side. I'd been so afraid of breaking the family apart that I'd failed to see it was already broken. Emily had been betrayed in the worst way possible, and instead of protecting her, I'd minimized her pain. I tried to make her the bigger person when all she really needed was for me to stand beside her and say, "This is wrong.
You didn't deserve this."
That realization crushed me. It wasn't just that I'd failed Emily, I'd actively contributed to her hurt. I thought back to all the times she'd tried to tell me how deeply Charlotte's betrayal had affected her, how isolated she'd felt when I refused to take a stand. I'd brushed her off, telling myself I was doing what was best for the family. But the truth was, I'd been a coward. I stayed up that night, staring at the blank screen of my phone, debating whether to call Emily again. But what could I even say? Sorry felt so inadequate. I wanted to tell her that I understood now, that I'd been wrong to push forgiveness, that I should have been her ally instead of a neutral bystander. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't erase the years of pain I'd caused. I thought about Charlotte again, about how easily she dismissed the whole situation. Part of me wanted to confront her, to finally hold her accountable for what she'd done. But another part of me knew it wouldn't matter. This wasn't about Charlotte anymore. It was about the choices I'd made in response to her actions. And those choices had cost me my daughter. It was early evening when I stumbled across the photos. I'd been scrolling through Facebook, distractedly clicking through posts, when a tagged album stopped me cold. The caption read, "Emily's baby shower." Such a beautiful day celebrating this amazing mom-to-be. My stomach dropped as I opened the album, the photos loading one by one in a slow-motion reveal of a life I wasn't part of. Emily looked stunning. She was glowing, her baby bump cradled lovingly in her hands. The decorations were whimsical and sweet, pastel balloons, floral centerpieces, and a banner that read, "Welcome, baby," in big, glittering letters. Her friends surrounded her, holding up tiny onesies and gifts wrapped in cheerful paper. But it was the other people in the photos that stopped me. Her husband, smiling proudly by her side. Her stepmother, holding a tray of cupcakes, looking so at ease in the role I used to play. Even some of Emily's childhood friends were there, people I hadn't seen since they were teenagers. And me? I was nowhere to be found. I stared at those pictures for what felt like hours, my emotions cycling through grief, anger, and guilt. I imagined Emily opening gifts, laughing at jokes, and feeling the support of everyone around her. Everyone except me. I wanted to blame anyone. Emily for not inviting me. Charlotte for setting all of this in motion. Even her stepmother for stepping into a role I should have had. But deep down, I knew the truth. This was on me. It was my decisions that led to this. My failure to defend Emily when she needed me, my inability to prioritize her pain over my misguided sense of family unity, my years of silence when I should have fought harder to reconnect. I'd let the cracks in our relationship deepen until they became a chasm, and now, it felt impossible to bridge. Desperate to do something, anything, I grabbed my phone and sent Emily a message.
Hi, sweetheart.
I saw the pictures from your baby shower. It looked beautiful. I know things haven't been easy between us, but I'd really love a chance to talk and start rebuilding. Please let me know if you're open to it. I miss you more than you can imagine. Her response came hours later. I was folding laundry when the notification buzzed, and I nearly dropped everything to read it. Her reply was short, just a handful of words. Not now, Mom. Maybe someday. But not now. I sat there, rereading her message until the words blurred. Maybe someday. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. It felt like a door half closed, the faintest sliver of hope that someday she might let me back in. But how long could I wait for someday? And would it even come? I wanted to respond, to plead with her to reconsider, but I stopped myself. If I pushed too hard, I risked driving her further away.
So I let it be.
I didn't message again, even though every fiber of my being wanted to. The baby shower photos haunted me for days. I'd find myself going back to them, studying every detail like they held some secret answer. Emily was starting a family, a new chapter of her life, and I wasn't part of it. I kept asking myself how it had come to this. How did things get so bad that my own daughter didn't want me there for one of the happiest days of her life? But I already knew the answer. It wasn't just one moment, one mistake. It was years of choices that had led us here. And now, all I could do was sit on the sidelines and watch as she built a life without me. It had been building for weeks, the simmering anger I couldn't shake. Seeing Emily's life unfold from a distance, her baby shower, her happiness, her bond with her stepmother, had left me hollowed out with guilt. But what kept bubbling to the surface, unbidden and undeniable, was my growing resentment toward Charlotte. The more I thought about her smug indifference, the more I realized how much I'd let her off the hook. One evening after dinner, I finally broke. Charlotte was scrolling through her phone at the kitchen table, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. She looked so casual, so unbothered, that it pushed me over the edge. Do you even realize what you've done? I blurted out, my voice sharp and trembling. She looked up startled. What are you talking about? Emily, I snapped. Her life. You ruined it, Charlotte. You destroyed her relationship, her trust, her family. And you act like it's nothing. Charlotte sighed, setting her phone down with exaggerated patience. Mom, it's been 6 years. 6 years. Are we really still talking about this? Yes, I said, my voice rising. Because Emily hasn't moved on. And frankly, I don't think she ever will. You took something from her that she can't get back, and you don't even care. Charlotte rolled her eyes, leaning back in her chair. I apologized, didn't I? It's not my fault she couldn't let it go. She's the one who decided to blow it up into this huge thing. Her nonchalance stunned me. A huge thing? Charlotte, you slept with her fiancé. How can you possibly minimize that? She shrugged. It wasn't like they were soulmates or anything. Michael was miserable, and it just happened. People make mistakes, Mom. Her words sent a fresh wave of fury through me. This wasn't a mistake, Charlotte. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday or missing an appointment. What you did was calculated. Selfish. And now Emily wants nothing to do with me because I try to protect you. For the first time, her expression shifted, a flicker of annoyance breaking through her indifference. What was I supposed to do, Mom? Beg her for forgiveness every day for the rest of my life. She wasn't going to forgive me no matter what I did. That's not the point. I yelled, slamming my hand down on the table. The point is you broke her, and you never once seemed to care. And I let you. I let you stay in this house. I let you brush it off, and now I've lost my daughter because of it. Charlotte stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You're blaming me for your issues with Emily? Seriously? That's on you, Mom. You're the one who couldn't fix things with her. Don't make me the scapegoat. She stormed out of the room before I could respond, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my boiling anger. I sat there for a long time, replaying the argument in my head. Charlotte's complete lack of remorse, her refusal to take any responsibility, it was like a slap in the face. I realized then that I'd been wrong all along. I'd risked my relationship with Emily for someone who didn't deserve it, someone who didn't even understand the damage they'd caused. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emily's words, about her accusation that I hadn't taken her side. She was right. I hadn't. I'd prioritized keeping Charlotte in my life, thinking it would hold the family together, but all it had done was tear us apart. I'd failed Emily in the most profound way, and now I was reaping the consequences. Unable to shake the guilt, I opened my laptop and started typing. I wrote Emily a long, heartfelt email, pouring out everything I'd been holding inside. I told her I was wrong to push forgiveness, wrong to expect her to move on when I hadn't truly stood up for her. I admitted that I'd chosen neutrality when she needed an ally, and that choice had cost me more than I could bear. I didn't hold back. I told her how much I missed her, how deeply I regretted the years we'd lost. I hit send, hoping, praying that it would make a difference. But as I stared at the empty inbox, waiting for a response that might never come, I couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late. The notification pinged early in the morning, catching me off guard. I hadn't expected Emily to reply so quickly, if at all. My heart raced as I opened the email, holding my breath, hoping against hope that her words would offer some glimmer of reconciliation. But as I read her response, my chest tightened. "I appreciate the apology," she wrote, "but it doesn't change the past. I've built my life without you because I had to. Maybe one day, we can start over. But not right now." I stared at the screen, reading and rereading those words until the meaning sank in. It wasn't angry or accusatory like before. There was no trace of the raw, blistering emotion that had colored our last few conversations. Instead, it was quiet, detached. And that made it so much worse. Emily wasn't furious anymore. She was indifferent. I'd always thought an apology could mend even the deepest wounds. That if I poured out my heart, admitted my mistakes, and showed her how much I cared, it would be enough to begin healing. But this reply didn't feel like the start of anything. It felt final, like a door closing softly but firmly in my face. She wasn't shutting me out because of anger, she just didn't need me anymore. For hours, I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly out the window. I felt hollow, as if the weight of her words had scooped out every last bit of hope I'd been holding on to. I tried to focus on the one shred of positivity, maybe one day, but even that felt like a polite way of saying, "Don't hold your breath." Later that day, I mentioned the email to Charlotte. I wasn't sure why, maybe I just needed someone to hear how much it hurt, even if it was the wrong person. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone when I brought it up. Emily replied to my email, I said, my voice tight. She said she's built her life without me. Charlotte barely looked up. "What did you expect?" she said casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "She's always been dramatic. Honestly, Mom, you're wasting your energy. She's never going to get over it." Her indifference hit like a slap. I felt my hands clench into fists at my sides. "Do you even care, Charlotte?" asked, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused?" She finally set her phone down and gave me a flat look. "Mom, you're the one making this a big deal." I said I was sorry. She chose to hold on to it. That's on her, not me. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how selfish and heartless she sounded. But what would be the point? Charlotte had made it clear years ago that she didn't think she bore any responsibility for what had happened. She saw Emily's pain as overblown and my guilt as unnecessary. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed Emily's email in my mind. The detachment in her words haunted me more than her anger ever had. Anger meant she still cared, that there was something left to fight for. But indifference? That felt insurmountable. I couldn't stop thinking about her life now, her husband, her baby, her stepmother standing in the space I should have filled. It was clear that she'd built a family that didn't include me, and I couldn't blame her. I'd let her down when it mattered most, and now she was protecting herself the only way she knew how, by keeping me at a distance. The realization settled over me like a heavy fog. Apologies might mend some things, but not everything. Not this. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if one day might never come. Regret is a strange thing. It doesn't come all at once like a wave crashing over you. Instead, it seeps in slowly, like water through a crack, until one day you realize you're drowning in it. That's where I am now, drowning in regret, with no lifeline in sight. Every time I see Emily's life play out on social media, the ache sharpens. Her baby is due any day now, and I can't help but wonder if she'll tell me when it happens. Will she send a text or share a photo, even if just to let me know that everything went well? Or will I find out weeks later, stumbling across a picture of her holding her newborn, the way I found out about her wedding, her pregnancy, her shower? I've imagined every possible scenario, replayed it in my head 1,000 times. Me showing up at her doorstep unannounced, my heart in my throat, begging for another chance. The scene unfolds the same way every time. Emily doesn't yell or slam the door. That would almost be easier. Instead, she looks at me with those calm, detached eyes and tells me, firmly but politely, that it's not the right time. And then the door closes, and I'm left standing there with nothing but my apologies and my shame. So I wait. I sit here, hoping, praying, that someday she'll let me back in. That, maybe one day, will become today. But every passing moment feels heavier, the silence between us growing wider, until I start to wonder if that day will ever come. I've thought about reaching out again, but I stop myself every time. I don't want to risk pushing her further away, and the truth is, I don't even know what I'd say. How many times can you apologize for the same mistakes before the words lose all meaning? How many ways can you say, I was wrong? I failed you. Please let me try again? And honestly, I don't know if I deserve it. I don't know if I deserve to hold her baby, to hear her call me mom again, to be a part of the life she's built without me. I tell myself that I was doing my best back then, that I was trying to hold the family together, but the truth is, my best wasn't good enough. Emily needed me to be her champion, and I wasn't. She needed me to stand by her, and instead, I stood in the middle, pretending that neutrality was the same as love. The house feels unbearably quiet these days. Charlotte moved out last year, and while she still calls occasionally, our conversations are surface level and strained. I don't know if it's because she feels guilty, or if it's just who she's always been, but her presence doesn't fill the void Emily left. Nothing does. I still keep that old photo of Emily and me from her graduation on my nightstand. It's the last time I remember her looking at me with pure joy, her trust in me unshaken. I wonder if I'll ever see that look again, or if it's gone forever, a relic of a time I didn't appreciate until it was too late. For now, all I can do is wait. Wait for her to reach out. Wait for that fragile thread between us to tighten instead of fray. And if that day never comes, I don't know how I'll handle it. All I know is that I'll keep hoping, because it's the only thing I have left.